Hello and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to explain why I started home recording. So why don't we go and check it out? I got a Spanish guitar at the age of 7, and like all kids with a guitar, I had visions of being in a band and getting up on the stage. And as time went by, I got into bands, and bands came and went, and we had a great time. But we never actually recorded anything, apart from on a basic cassette recorder with the little microphone that came with it, and it was really distorted and compressed. So it was very hard to decipher really what was going on. But then, in the late 1970s and into the 1980s, I used to walk up to Soho in the West End of London. At the time, I was living in West London. I was a poor lad and I didn't have very much money, so I would walk up there and go on an adventure. And during that adventure, one day, I came across a little alleyway, I would call it really, called St Anne's Court. And so I decided to walk down there, and lo and behold, there was a very highly esteemed recording studio called Trident Recording Studios. They unfortunately shut their doors in 1981 for commercial purposes. But going past that place had a real aura around it, and it really inspired me to want to go on and record my own music. I travelled around West London looking for recording studios, obviously not the big commercial ones, but they were still of good standing. And to my shock and horror as a young boy, I found out that one, if I wasn't signed to a band that were signed up to a recording label, it was very unlikely that they were going to let me record there anyway. And also, the costs were prohibitive. We were talking anywhere in the region between £600 and £1,000 per day, which obviously was totally out of the question for a young individual like myself. So I then had to look at an alternative. In 1986, everything changed for the better. And for anybody wanting to record at home, although 4-track recorders were around before this time, the one that really came at the right time for me was the Tascam 246 Portastudio. It was built like a tank, it was very strong, great craftsmanship. It had really good production and mixing features on it as well, which were a huge bonus. Considering that I just had a few microphones and an electric guitar and amp, I felt like I was in my own commercial studio. You could also record on all 4 tracks at the same time, which to my knowledge wasn't possible before that, although correct me if I'm wrong. It also had much better fidelity, so the sound quality was a big jump compared to prior 4-track recorders. It wasn't at the same level, obviously, as the big commercial deck tape machines, but it certainly was a huge leap forward. The cost at the time was a little prohibitive. It cost me over £1,000. At that time, I was coming up to 19 years old. It was a lot of money back then. I mean, it's a lot of money today, but back then that was a huge amount of money. You can see what an undertaking it was. It certainly was worth it, and it gave me many years of recording pleasure. After many years of using 4 tracks and being very happy with it, I then decided to take a bold move back in 2006. I moved onto the computer. If you're enjoying watching this video, please consider smashing that like button and subscribing to my channel so that I can keep on bringing this free content. And today it's what pretty much everyone uses, but back then it was a daring move and something that a lot of people were very anxious about. I decided to give it a go to see if it would work for me, and it has been a great addition to my workflow ever since. I started out with Cubase SX3, and I had a very basic but good at the time interface, which was the Line 6 UX2. Seeing as I wanted to record guitar, bass and be able to sing, then this came in very handy for me. As soon as I got to grips with the differences between working in a DAW and a 4-track, things moved on from there. After a few years, I moved on to the DAW Sonar, and I really liked that DAW. And then after a few years from there, I then moved on again to Studio One by PreSonus. And about 8 years ago, I moved on to what I'm still using today, and that is Reaper. For me, the price, which is very, very reasonable for a DAW, that competes very well with any others. I'm not affiliated to any product or DAW company or anything like that. And as most people know, Reaper is open source. But it just the form factor of it appealed to me. The fact that it was cheap, it was very flexible. Yes, there is a bit of a steep learning curve at the beginning. I found it to be great looking into it to make it something that I could just use every day, just go into it and record and mix and master and do whatever I wanted to do within a template that I've built up, and I've been very happy ever since with it. So you've heard my story and you've seen how I got into production, what inspired me to do that, what inspired me to go into home production, and the methods I've used over the years. They've changed greatly, but what I would really like to know is how you got into recording and your methods and what inspired you to do that. I would really love to know your story below this video. Please feel free to ask any questions you want about my setup as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Sabs out.